Это видеоинтервью, которое я уже давно пыталась сделать с нашим Urology Chief Residentом, или по-русски, если я не ошибаюсь, это переводится как старший врач-резидент, вернее, или ординатор по урологии. Он рассказал про различные очень важные моменты матчинга, процесса матчинга, также интервью, какие вопросы могут задавать, и вообще все нюансы, которые будут интересны врачам, которые готовятся или сдают степы USMLE и готовятся к процессу матчинга. Харт — это наш Chief-резидент, он рассказал о работе резидентов, про зарплату, сколько часов они работают, в общем, масса полезной информации. Само интервью было на английском языке, но я постаралась сделать субтитры на русском языке внизу, и если они будут слишком быстрыми, вы не будете успевать за ними, то сверху вот здесь вот где-то есть опция настроек, если вы на нее кликнете, то там можно, по-моему, если я не ошибаюсь, можно убыстрять, но, по-моему, даже можно замедлять видео, и я надеюсь, это вам поможет. Если у вас английский еще слабый, то вы сможете исследовать по субтитрам за сутью всего интервью. Я надеюсь, это вам будет полезно, и если у вас есть какие-то вопросы, пишите в комментариях. Приятного просмотра!
Hi, Hart.
Hey, Shauna. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for dedicating your time. So I have a lot of questions from actually foreign doctors that been educated anywhere but US. And when they come to US, they have to pass USMLE. And besides that, the hardest part is matching. So they were asking questions. How many programs have you applied yourself? First, second, what helped you to get into a program? And another question will be probably a difference between matching, helpful tips for general matching and specialty matching. So if you could answer those questions, would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. No, happy to do this. So I applied to urology 5 years ago. So that's sort of my experience in terms of applying to residencies, but also surgical subspecialty residencies, and particularly urology, which is a little bit different than a number of other specialties. But I think we'll start with just talking about getting into surgical specialties. I think for foreign medical graduates, sometimes it can be a little bit of an uphill battle in terms of matching.
Yes.
But I think that's sort of a stigma that's kind of starting to go away. And it's not something that we really worry as much about now, rather than maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. It was a lot, the hill was a lot steeper in order to, get up here. But, for my part, I applied to, I think like 60 or I think 80 or 90 programs I applied to. But that is something that you have to do if you're going into something that's very competitive and hard to get into, like certain surgical subspecialties. I would say urology, ENT, ophthalmology, plastic surgery, orthopedics, things like that a lot of people are trying to get into. And I think if you're going into something that is not quite as competitive, something that's maybe not surgical, like internal medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, you don't have to apply to that many programs. You can
emergency
medicine, you can apply to like maybe 20 or 30 or 40 or something like that. You don't have to do quite as much. So yeah, I'd say that's the first thing in terms of getting into a program, is applying to a certain number of programs in order to maximize your chances.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so once you apply, then you have to go through interviews. So what kind of questions they usually ask, and what tips would you, or life hacks would you give to our doctors to go through smoothly that interview, which is gruesome?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, the interview is probably the most important part of the match process. I think once you get an interview from a program, oftentimes your application is considered sort of equal with all the other people who've gotten interviews, and it's just how you sort of shine personally that really moves the needle. So most people they have certain accomplishments, and they're proud of them, et cetera, et cetera. You need to have sort of a 2-minute spiel about who you are, what you want to go into, why you want to go into it, and what makes you a great applicant, what sets you apart from other applicants. Why should this program match you rather than all the other people that they're interviewing that day. So definitely have that 2-minute or 3-minute almost rehearsed speech kind of memorized and set, so that you can really sort of articulate that answer and really give them a good one, because it's going to be something like, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself and why do you want to go into urology, or tell me what your pathway was like to applying to ENT. Why do you want to be an ENT, that kind of thing. So one, have that down. There are a bunch of common interview questions that I think you should have sort of canned answers to. One of them being like, why this surgical subspecialty, or why whatever residency specialty you're going into. Another common question I would say is, tell me about a time that you failed and what did you learn from it. So it's sort of a trick question almost, because they're trying to get you to show a weakness of yourself, and you need to, you're sort of creating a cliff of your own choosing to jump off of, and sort of expose a weakness to them. So maybe tell them something that's sort of a small weakness, but really emphasize how much you learned from the experiments, stuff like that.
I see.
Some interviewers had very random questions like, tell me a joke, or
Are you
if
serious?
you had to be a tree, what type of tree would you be and why? That kind of thing. Just to see sort of,
a tree.
It's less important about what your answer is, but they're trying to figure out how you think and how you think on your
critical
feet.
thinking, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Do they ask also like how you get along with difficult people, or
They do, yeah. All kinds, like how do you deal with conflict? A lot of them, so if depending on what specialty you're going into, you'll probably have some degree of research in that specialty, which can be very important for competitive specialties like surgical subspecialties. And in those types of interviews, they will often ask you, hey, what kind of research have you done? And you'll have to talk about the various papers or studies you've been involved with. And
so it's like accomplishments.
yeah, exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
And how many papers or studies you have to be involved, research projects?
It really depends. So a lot of surgical subspecialties can be very research heavy, and doing a lot of research can get your foot in the door. Urology is one of those. I would say dermatology is one of those. Plastic surgery is one of those, where it really helps for you to be an author on a number of papers, either a first author or a second or third author. Being on abstracts for specialty meetings can also be valuable, presentations that you've given at different academic events, things like that. So, but if you've been involved in any of those things, definitely know a lot about that subject and be able to answer questions about what you did in that research and etc.
Nice. And when you're talking about accomplishment, doesn't matter, is it like done at home, or let's say while they were getting ready for USMLE for the test, if they find any research here, so is it better if research was done based on US facilities, or it can be at home as well?
It can be at home as well. I think it's better if it's in a more prestigious journal that is widely read, that a lot of people read. And obviously there are international medical journals everywhere that, are widely read. So if you get a paper accepted in one of those, that's a big deal. Really sort of any paper or abstract that ends up getting published on PubMed, which is a website that lists basically every relevant piece of research that's been done in the last 50 years.
So
because that's really exactly. That is one of the things that really counts.
PubMed. Okay. Any other resources that have to be, if it's possible, published? Just the biggest one is PubMed. Okay.
Yeah, as long as the journal has a connection with PubMed and is able to list their articles through the PubMed website.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about specialty, subspecialty, but if you would like to go, let's say any other, like you were saying, internal medicine, it's like general. So what do they have to do for that one? Do they have to do also be published, or just like any? And also another thing, any experience, let's say, because in foreign countries, doctors, while they're in medical school, they can work as nurses. So I know in US they don't do that, but would it be counted as good experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's, if you're able to, if you have experience working as a nurse, that you are already exposed to actual healthcare delivery and how that works. And it really gives you a unique perspective that I think a lot of residents don't have. We actually had one of our residents, Brandon Wilson. He was an ICU nurse before he became a resident. And I think that was a big talking point for him in his interviews, was like, the experiences he had, the perspective it gave him, how he sees healthcare a little bit differently because of that. And I think like Brandon,
I know
Brandon,
him. I'm surprised.
He's very easy to work with.
Yeah,
I
I didn't know
imagine
he
from a
was a
nursing
nurse.
perspective, that's one of the reasons why. Yeah.
Good to know. So
yes,
it's a big plus.
It is, definitely. And I think it's something you should talk about too.
Awesome. Have you noticed, like, not have you noticed, but also another thing, a lot of foreign doctors, they're scared because if they're old grads, what they call them, like they graduated long time ago, they're working back home as a, maybe not like famous doctors, but even just regular doctors, but for a couple of years, like 10 years or so. So matching, I know in US, there is no such a thing as ageism, but how hard for them is to, kind of compete with younger generation, old grads versus younger generation?
Yeah, I don't think, I think ageism probably exists to some extent, but I don't think it's really that significant. I think, everyone has their own personal biases, and you can't help but, have those going into an interview. But I think in a lot of ways, being older, I think, faculty members here would look at that in terms of you have more experience, you have more perspective, you're more mature.
Interesting.
So I don't think it's something that would really be counted against you that much.
Oh, good. Okay.
I don't think it's a big deal.
I just wondered. And also I know sometimes some programs, they like diversity, meaning females versus males and, minorities. So do you have any intake on that one, because the foreigners does it matter? That's what I was wondering,
Yeah, so I think it is anytime you can bring some sort of diversity to the table for an underrepresented minority in medicine, that's something that a lot of programs, especially our program, we really look for that. We're urologists, which has traditionally been a male-dominated specialty because we predominantly work with male parts, right? But there have been an increasing number of women applicants who have been applying, and that's a big plus. That's something we've looked for and tried to recruit in order to make our residency program more diverse. But Black, Hispanic, these are all underrepresented. Asian. These are all underrepresented minorities in medicine. Who the thought is that one, it sort of broadens the other residents' experience. It helps them realize, what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes. But also, I think it really helps improve patient care, because when you're dealing with someone a patient who comes from a similar background as you, you can have a lot more empathy for them and, sort of understand their perspective more. So I think it improves patient care, it improves the experience of the program, and makes us better. So that's definitely something we look for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And another question, going back to residency now, because I know soon you soon to be attending, and we're proud of you, and we're happy to see such a growth in you, and I'm sure we will be still in touch. But going back to your residency, what was to be like a new resident? What was pros and cons, what you hated, what you loved?
Sure.
And how many hours did you work?
Yeah, so it's a lot of work. I don't completely, I think every country is a little bit different in terms of what their work hour expectations are as residents. I know a lot of times in the UK, it's very, you don't have to work that hard necessarily. You get 40-hour work weeks. In the United States, and I think it's this way in some other countries, we work very hard as residents. There's an 80-hour cap for not being able to work more than 80 hours, although that is...
Per week?
Per week, but that's often flaunted. There's often times where you do work more than 8 hours a week and you just don't report it.
Yeah, it's undercover. We're not going to say to anybody about that, but yes.
And I don't,
but it happens.
I don't, that doesn't necessarily happen at this program, but it does, I think, in other programs.
You heard about other programs. Yeah, of course.
And so you work very hard, and it's sort of an apprentice model. And I think that's kind of how residencies all over the world are structured, but as an intern, it's a little bit overwhelming and kind of terrifying sometimes because you don't really know what you're doing. You're fresh out of medical school. You're dealing with patients. You've never really dealt with patients before. You're new to the operating room. But as you get older, every year you have an increasing amount of responsibility and sort of oversight as to how things work. So you work really hard. It can be kind of grueling at times, especially in the middle of the winter when you don't get a lot of daylight, and it's but it's worth it, and it's cool. Like the hospital system, working in a hospital system with actual patients and making a difference, that sort of keeps you going. So
wonderful, thank you so much.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing, like, being a male, all the stuff was on your wife's, like when you have a child, so she probably did majority of the baby care, or who helped you guys?
Yeah, so my wife is also in medicine. She was an OBGYN resident, and because of that, she was working just as hard as me. So we really sort of tried to split the duties of childcare. I think, inevitably as a mother, you sometimes do more than the father, and part of that's cultural. I think in the United States, that's been the traditional approach, but I think that's really sort of eroding pretty quickly, and the expectation nowadays is that each partner could equal, and I think that's doable in medicine and residency as long as you just are able to talk to your partner and figure out a schedule and a game plan for every day. I'm from the city that I work in, so my parents are here, which has been a huge help because they're always there to if we have some sort of disaster, like she gets sick at daycare and neither of us can pick her up, they can pick her up and bring her home, that kind of thing. So that's been huge.
So family support is the
family
big deal.
is super important. If you're gonna have your own family, I think family support is super important.
Because childcare is expensive too.
It is. It's very expensive. And if you can afford something like a nanny, that's great. That solves a lot of issues for you. But a lot of residents can't afford a nanny.
Yeah, because when you start working as a resident, well, you spend money on your education while you're a student, and then when you become a resident, you finally start earning some money. And I know initial paycheck for residents is smaller than even for nurses.
Oh, it's way smaller. Shut it! You don't know how much I make, do you? Yeah.
No, I don't know how much you make.
You would be embarrassed.
Yes, I don't know how much you make.
Residents make between, I think, like $50,000 and $70,000 a year. So it's that's pretty much across the board. And every year you get a little bit of a pay raise.
Oh my God! It's the starting salary for nurses in our hospital is like $60,000.
Yeah, starting salary.
Yeah, starting.
Yeah, but I bet it goes way higher than that.
Yeah, so if like you work 10 years, yes, you get more as a nurse.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back for residency, so every year, so you start with small amount, and then as you grow in your ranks, you get a little bit extra. And any other, like, you still have to pay for your school.
Yeah, so you have student loans, which vary. I guess probably a lot of international medical graduates don't have student loans because their countries pay for it, right? Or
no, not countries. They also, it depends what programs they attend.
Gotcha.
And if it's paid programs, they have to pay. But usually when they come here, they already paid for their program before.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but it's a lot cheaper than in US. They don't have like 200,000 or
so
like
medical school is very expensive here, and it really your payback scheme depends on how you borrowed the money. We can borrow money through the federal government, and when you can structure the payback so that it's income based. So if you're only making like $50,000 a year, the amount you pay every month is not that much. But then when you become an attending and start making a lot more, the money you pay back every month goes up. So a lot of loans are structured that way, but it just depends on how the loan is structured.
Wow, so unfair. They don't even give you a year of break. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Uncle Sam is watching. Also, what would you give advice, like the new residents when they start? I know it's overwhelming. And I know you guys, that's the reason I love our urology, because I know how you are all nurturing. For new residents, I see that how you guys teaching them, you take them under your wing and you explain a lot of things. And I like that about you all. But is it everywhere like that? Do you know by any chance? Because I know you talk to other people, other programs. How are they now?
I think most programs are like that, where you, because of the programs are structured in a hierarchical manner, like as a chief resident, I'm a 5th year chief resident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm in charge of sort of all the other residents, and the 4th year residents are in charge of everyone below them. The 3rd year residents are in charge of everyone below them. That kind of thing. And it's that sort of mentorship model. I think most residencies in the United States are structured that way. So your more senior residents are a huge resource when you start. I think one of the most important things about when you start and just throughout residency is being humble, and always being able to admit when you're wrong, being able to admit when you don't know something or you feel like you're over your head and need to ask for help. That's probably the most important thing for surviving, especially intern year.
Okay, so when, let's say, you know, sometimes in the beginning you're kind of embarrassed to ask for help.
Yeah.
So you're saying you always have to ask for help, but at what point you would say, like, you know, especially not knowing the culture, US culture, even for me, it was in the beginning, it was hard to ask because I thought, like, you know, for help, I thought, well, maybe they will say, you should know by now what you're doing. Yeah. So do you have like talks, like expectations, what is expected out of residents, what they have to know and all of that, how it works?
I think as an intern, we really have like zero expectations for what you should know. No, I mean, really, like it's sort of whatever you're coming in with. We sort of expect, we kind of expect that you know how, you know, we expect that you know how the healthcare system works, like in terms of, you know, inpatients get rounded on once or twice a day, you know, doctors put in the orders, that, you know, basic things like that. But apart from that, it's, you know, you're here to sort of learn as an intern. I think after intern year, there definitely are expectations. Like there's an expectation that you figure out the basic things during intern year. You figure out how to be efficient during intern year. But so like second year, the expectations become much higher.
After second year. And then when you're in OR, like working with attendings, once you're done, you're almost there. Do you guys feel like the program really prepares you well, or you still feel like you have to go, you know, to be like, I know fellowship is like subspecialty, you learn more, but do you feel like you're ready, or like after you graduate and you're done, do they have any other like teaching, you know, help or something like that for new doctors? I mean, attendings. Does it happen, anything like that?
So I think, you know, urology is one of those specialties that there's still a huge market for being a general urologist who, you know, you can do a little bit of everything still. A lot of specialties are not like that. And like orthopedics, there aren't really general orthopedic surgeons anymore. Almost everyone goes into a fellowship. Versus urology, it's about 50-50. Like I'm not going into a, you know, fellowship, and I certainly do feel prepared to do the vast majority of, you know, cases that we do here. But there's certain, you know, bigger cases like, you know, I probably won't be doing, you know, cystectomy and ileocondyles by myself as a, you know, resident. I mean, as a attending. But, you know, everything else I'd probably feel comfortable doing.
But even that, if you will, like, you know, pair up with other...
Yeah, and so there, especially in surgery, I don't know if this is the case with non-operative fields, but in operative fields, like, you know, different surgical subspecialties, if you go into private practice, you often have more senior partners that you work with who do have those skills, and you can double scrub with them, and they can sort of walk you through how they do certain things.
Nice.
That's a resource that's definitely there, and it's not quite as good as doing your own fellowship, but it's something that if you really want to pick up a new skill in a new surgery after you graduate and you join a private practice or a hospital system, you can get another surgeon to sort of show you how they do it and walk you through a couple cases.
Oh, good to know. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that. So it's kind of helpful for people to know.
Yeah.
And so when also you did everything, do you feel like, would you choose any specialty, or like why urology? Why you choose urology from the get-go?
Sure. Yeah. So I wanted to go into something surgical where I was working with my hands because I like working with my hands. And I think a lot of the surgical subspecialties like urology, ENT, ophthalmology, they're very, you know, they're problems that patients come in with that are, they're not easy to fix, but they're easily fixable. There's something that we have the capability to, with a pretty simple procedure or surgery, to just make a non-issue and make it go away. And because of that, patients are often really happy. Versus other specialties like, you know, I don't know, internal medicine, endocrinology, cardiology, patients have more chronic conditions that are really hard to fix. And it's, you don't have a lot of happy patients. You just have patients that are getting sort of worse and worse. I think the the anatomy of the pelvis is really interesting to operate in. It's a unique challenge that is sort of fun to deal with. I like the patient population. I like talking to old dudes who can't pee, and they seem so grouchy, and you help them pee, and they feel they're just so happy.
Of course.
It's also it's interesting talking to patients about very sensitive issues like with their sexual organs or sexual function or urination on a daily basis, because you really you get to see a different side of people than you really typically do see in the rest of society, and also you don't really see that in other medical specialties either, where like the patients really they're just telling you their deepest, darkest secrets, and I think that relationship is really meaningful.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And probably I'm not gonna take up more your time. I know you are busy, but any advice would you give? I was also wondering, per se, what's the prognosis? I was gonna say, for the future, what specialties harder to get in? If people they're trying to choose. I know everybody wants subspecialty, because a lot of people come with their own cardiology, urology, gynecology, anesthesiology, but worst come to worst, what do you think? Maybe you know it, maybe you're not. What's the easiest matching process to go to? What type of programs,
which residency is easiest to get into? I think the ones that are probably easiest to get into, pediatrics is pretty easy to get into. Internal medicine is pretty easy to get into. General surgery is also pretty easy to get into.
Surgically.
Yeah, surgically, even though, because it's not really a surgical subspecialty. So it's when you get into general surgery, you can go into general surgery ultimately, but a lot of them do fellowships after that are also really hard to get into, surgical oncology, cardiothoracics, colorectal, that kind of thing. So it's but general surgery itself is pretty easy to get into.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And how about do you know if interventional radiology or any of those, have you heard?
I think that's pretty hard to get into.
They're hard.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
just because there are not a lot of spots.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So how to find out information, which program has most spots? Do they have any certain website to go to, or?
That is a little bit harder to figure out. A lot of that is just word of mouth in terms of which programs are harder to get, which, specific programs are harder to get into, which ones aren't. The ACGME, American College of Medical Graduate Education, I think that's what it stands for, ACGME. They publish data on not necessarily specific institutions, but specialty-wise. They say, what % of applicants who applied to this type of program got in, things like that. So that can be very helpful in terms of figuring out a specialty that you think you could actually fit into and match into. And I think they actually have separate statistics for foreign medical graduates and how foreign medical graduates fare in that same application process in different residencies. So that's a great resource for statistics in terms of figuring out, what are your chances, etc.
Okay, thank you so much. And then the last question, what would you say to residents, I don't know, word of advice, or best of luck, or whatever you want to say?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff, but I think that one of the things that it's funny because I was interviewing, urology applicants. And
recently. That's what I was asking you. How did it go?
I kept telling them, don't just think of this as don't think of residency as a dark tunnel that you're traveling through, and then attending life is the light at the end, because it's, it can be long and it can be grueling, but it's part of your life, and don't forget that you're still living your life. Don't forget to be happy.
That's nice.
Yeah, well, it's a hard perspective to have because you work so hard.
Yes,
and you're always
80
working
hours
towards this goal. But take a couple seconds every day to sort of step back and smell the roses and call your family and be happy, because you only get one life,
Oh, and then I'm sorry, I keep telling you I'm gonna cut it short, but last thing I forgot about, if you get sick, do you have vacation time, sick leave, or how that works?
Yeah, so we have 3 weeks of vacation per year.
Doesn't matter what year you are.
Doesn't matter what year. Well, as a chief resident, I have 2. So,
what?
Yeah. I know, right?
Oh, how did that happen?
But yeah, there's definitely sick leave that you can take. You know, that's not, if you get sick on the job, like there are resources where, you know, you can still get paid and be sick. There are certain requirements in residency based on different residency programs where they'll say, you know, you have to work this many number of weeks to, you know, graduate from the program, that kind of thing. So but like we've got, you know, I think we've got pretty good, you know, maternity, you know, policies here.
Yes.
Paternity policies we're still working on. I think, you know, I had a kid my third year of residency and I got 2 weeks, which, I mean, you know, that's more than my dad took. Like my dad took like a day. You know?
Well, back then, females usually used to take care of kids, not males.
But my wife, who was an OBGYN resident when she gave birth, she took 8 weeks. So like that's, you know, that's something you can take.
That's it.
Yeah.
Poor Amy.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of time though, you know?
Yeah, but still, you know, leaving your, you know, new baby and going back to residency. Yeah, I hear you. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all advices and valuable information you shared today. And thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you being attending. We'll keep in touch.
Right,
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.